Hi, boys and girls. All right, let's continue to learn today about relationships in historical text. Our essential question, how do I identify the relationships between events in historical texts? And our standard is the same. We are learning about the third informational standard, making connections between text that is historical or tells about history and the causes and effects. All right, so how do we determine causes and effects? Sometimes when we read a text, we will see that events, ideas, and steps are connected. The author might provide details about what happened, which is the effect, and why, which is the cause. And a lot of times we see that in your historical text. All right, so I'm going to read this passage to you about something that happened in history. All right, follow along as I read. July 4th, 1776 was the date that the Declaration of Independence was formally adopted by the Continental Congress. This marked independence for America from Great Britain and the monarchy. Early celebrations of Independence Day included concerts, bonfires, parades, and the firing of cannons and muskets. There were also public readings of the Declaration of Independence. Massachusetts was the first state to mark July 4th as an official state holiday in 1781. The first fireworks set off on the 4th of July was done in Philadelphia in 1777. It wasn't until 1870 that the 4th of July was made a federal holiday. Wow, guys, almost 100 years later. All right, and here's a picture of the Declaration of Independence. Now let's think. Events, ideas, and steps can be connected by causes and effects. So causes, why, and effects tell what happened. Causes, why something happened. Effects, what happened. So, we may have a question like, why was the 4th of July made a federal holiday? Do you see the answer? There we have that keyword, why, the cause. All right, we can find it right inside the text. Why was the 4th of July made a federal holiday? It's because it was the date that the Declaration of Independence was formally adopted by the Continental Congress. It was when America had its independence from Great Britain. All right, it became its own nation. All right, so we're going to look at another text today. You're going to read it. I'm going to read it with you, and then you're going to practice reading. And we're going to focus on answering some questions. And then tomorrow we'll look at it farther and decide if we see some cause and effect relationships in it. So let's look. Miss Powers can figure out where it is. There it is. I have too many things opened. All right, how many of you have already watched the video on Henry Ford? All right, who is Henry Ford? Yes, he is the man who started the Ford Motor Company. All right, so today we're going to read an article about an important development in transportation history. What transportation? Let's look. What is that, guys? Isn't that a cool car? Yes, it's really neat. All right, we have not, in our lifetime, seen a car look like that, right? So cars have definitely come a long way since the time of this type of car and Henry Ford's time. All right, so we're going to read and figure out a little bit about the Model T, and then see if we can make some connections. All right, read with me. Let's make it a little bit bigger. All right, the Model T by Thomas A. More. When the first cars were produced, only wealthy people could afford them. Henry Ford wanted to build a car that the average working person could afford. In 1908, the Ford Motor Company introduced a new low-cost car. It was called the Model T and sold for $825. Although the car was reasonably priced, Ford kept thinking of ways to make it even cheaper. He knew that the lower the price, the more customers he would gain, and the more money he would make. Ford's early cars were all handcrafted. This meant that each automobile was slightly different from the next. It also meant that each took a long time to make. Ford decided his cars would no longer be handcrafted. They would be put together in exactly the same way, saving time and money. In 1913, Ford began producing cars with the help of a moving assembly line. The moving assembly line achieved Ford's goal of turning out a car faster and for increasingly lower prices. In time, Ford's factory was turning out one automobile every 90 minutes. By 1915, the Ford Motor Company was earning record profits, and by 1918, half of all cars in the United States were Model Ts. Almost overnight, the United States became a nation on wheels. All right, so let's look back. All right, there's a couple of words that I think we need to go over. All right, we have the word handcrafted. What does it mean when it says Ford's early cars were handcrafted? It means they were made by hand. It says each one was slightly different from the next. What would cause one car to be slightly different from the next if they were handcrafted? Because when you hand make something or it's handcrafted, it's hard to make it exactly the same, right? Right, so it was hard for them to be exactly a match. when you're making them by hand. All right. What also was a problem for handcrafting these Model T cars? It took a long time, that's right. All right, so what did Ford decide to do to make the cars a little more quickly? All right. Yes, he decided to have a moving assembly line. And in tomorrow's video, we will have a quick little video that shows you what an assembly line looks like so you can get a better idea. Vehicles today are still made on assembly lines. All right, it's the quick way to make them. And everyone has certain parts that they work on. All right. Now, close reader habits. It's what good readers do. It says underline words and phrases that help you figure out why more people began owning cars. All right, so let's see what would cause people to own more cars. Let's look at the first paragraph. What was it that Ford did that would cause people to own more cars? All right, he introduced a low-cost car. Low-cost car. All right, and then he was thinking of ways to make it even cheaper. All right, he knew that to start with, only wealthy people could own them. He needed to make that car cheaper. All right. What else? Let's look at paragraph 3. All right, they got that moving assembly line. They were making cars faster for lower prices. That's right. So, making cars faster and for lower prices, guess what? More people could have cars, and they were cheaper because of that. All right, it says by 1918, half of all cars in the United States were Model Ts. So what were most people driving? Henry Ford's car. That's right. Look at this last sentence and think about what it says. Almost overnight, the United States became a nation on wheels. What does that mean? That means quickly the United States was starting to do what? Yes, drive vehicles. That's right. So the United States was starting to turn and change from the way they were driving. All right, let's look at your assignment for today. Okay, hopefully you've already watched the video on Henry Ford. If you have not, make sure to click and listen to some background information about Henry Ford. All right, when we finish, I want you to reread the story of the Model T. All you'll do is click on it and read it again. There's nothing to write. You're just reading the story again. As you read, I want you to think about the key events in the story, what happened, and why they happened. Think about those cause and effect relationships. Tomorrow, we are going to fill out a graphic organizer together as a class. All right, after you finish, we have a Google form here. It's called the Model T. You'll click on it and answer questions about what we've read today to show that you understand this historical text. And that is your reading assignment for today. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be glad to help you. All right, happy reading. I hope you've enjoyed Henry Ford.